Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name's Tom Jenkins. We are going to be starting the webinar in a couple of minutes. We're just going to allow everyone to load up. And so give us 30 seconds to 60 seconds, and then everyone should be in a position to be watching. Okay, I think most of the people who are joining us are now joined and online. As I said, welcome to this webinar. Those of you who are joining for a how-to session on how the North American marketplace works, it will be coming up later on in the webinar. We're having initially just a quick discussion as to the prospects for the market in North America for Europe, what the prospects are for this year, 2021, and what needs to be done to ensure that we have a season in 2021. And we will be touching on that. I must mention the fact that this North American marketplace, which I alluded to, is happening. It's our first one ever. It's a virtual marketplace for those people in Europe wanting to sell themselves to North American travel trade. It takes place on the 4th of March, and we will put a link up in the chat area if any of you want to know more about it. It's already selling very well. We could always do with having a few more people there. So if you want to come, please sign up. Now, the other thing I just mentioned is that we're about to embark on a quick discussion. If any of you have got any questions, we have a question facility on your GoToWebinar icon, and if you've got any questions, please post them. It helps it stop being a monologue or trialogue that we have. Well, today I'm delighted to be joined by Brett Walker, who's here as the chairman of the Canadian Tour Operators Association, and by Jennifer Tombaugh, who is the president of Tauck. Well, Discovery and Tauck are a leading member of USTOA. She used to be chairman of the marketing committee. She no longer has a statutory position at USTOA, I think, Jennifer, but I think you are in a position to talk about the United States perception of what's happening in Europe and the need for change. To put this into context, I think the thing to stress is that there is a lot of talk out there which is actually quite optimistic about 2021. It sounds very strange to sound optimistic in an environment where there is no business taking place whatsoever, and both the destinations and the origin markets are in lockdown, and we effectively appear to have no product and no demand for product. And yet, if you ask the operators, they will tell you that in North America, there is strong demand for Europe. There are lots of people wanting to come to Europe. There are lots of people who had to cancel their trips in 2020 and reschedule for 2021. So that is business on the books. And on top of which, if you listen to the sentiment within Europe, both Michael O'Leary of Ryanair and Jonathan Lundgren of EasyJet have both said that they see the summer as being not a boom time, but a perfectly good high season activity in Europe in June, July, and August. So we've got that situation which says things are okay or will be okay, and yet at the same time, as we speak, the nation states of Europe are putting up ever stronger and more belligerent barriers to people coming into their country. It's not just the United Kingdom, but the United Kingdom has just threatened visitors who lie about their quarantine requirement with a 10-year jail sentence. And not similar, but not unsimilar measures are being adopted throughout Europe and are done so on a nation-state basis. And I really want to ask both Jennifer and Brett, what they think this situation is going to be doing to business in the near future. Jennifer, please give me your perception of what's happening and what might have to happen. You're on mute. Sorry, that's my. You're on now, not on mute. You're there. All right.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. You're not the only person who's wanted to do that to me, so thank you for that. But good morning, everyone. I just want to thank you and Brett for the honor of joining you today and talking about the situation here, certainly in the U.S. And I want to say a big thank you and hello to all of our partners out there. Gosh, I wish I was with you. I really wish I was with you. I just got off a call with our friends at Oberammergau, and we all talked about hoping to be in Europe sometime soon. And I hope you all are staying safe and well. I guess I want to frame it, say sort of three things. First of all, I want to echo, Tom, what you just said. Europe is in huge demand here in the US. For Tauck, it's our most popular destination. We've been surveying our patrons about every 6 or 8 weeks throughout the pandemic. By far, Europe remains the top of the list. We're running, more than 50% of our guests want to be in Europe. Even though we're seeing some uptick in North America, Europe is still strong. And that's true across US TOA too. Of the international destinations, the top 20 international destinations among US TOA members, 14 of those are in Europe. And that accounts for a significant, obviously, passenger load, but also margin and revenue opportunity and job opportunity across Europe. And I want to come back to that in a moment. So number one, Europe is in demand and Americans very much want to come. The challenge right now is that bookings are very, very fragile. And those who are very close to tour operations know this, but in the US, people are asked to make their deposits and make their final commitment 60 to 90 to sometimes 120 days prior. And so when we have no information about border opening, we're already starting to see churn into that second quarter. So April and May, given, markets don't like uncertainty, consumers definitely don't like uncertainty. And so they're saying, I'd rather go ahead now and either transfer to the fall or I'll just move it to 2022. So while right now I look at our books and I know I talk to other operators here in the US, it looks like a robust year for Europe. It's very, very fragile right now, given the churn and given the lack of information about when borders might come. And the implications for that are really, really real. Again, in the US, the difference between the borders opening in July and the borders opening in September is a make or break year for many US operators. Fortunately at Tauck, we've been around for 95 years, we'll be around for another 95 more at least, but not everyone is in that position. And so Europe is a leading indicator for the health of certainly the tour operation business in the US and for tourism at large. And again, that goes back to needing to have a plan in advance and having protocols in advance, because people need to know that certainty in order to be able to have the confidence to put their money down, for operators to gear up, and for us to take guests there. If we did get an announcement in July, then the summer season is pretty much gone. And so this is why I really appreciate the opportunity to share the excitement that we all share for coming to Europe, the understanding that we are in a health crisis, but that this group of European, US, and Canadian operators have worked together to put in those protocols for our own operations and hold ourselves to high standards to be able to ensure we're operating safely. And we very much hope and want to work with anyone who we can to help ensure that those borders do open so that we can bring our guests to you and ensure that there's a robust economic growth and job opportunity for the tourism market throughout Europe in 2021.
Well, thank you. I mean, Brett, do you have an angle on this?
Hi, Tom. Was there a question there?
Yeah, it was. I was just wondering if, again, what's the perception in Canada? Is it very similar? Is my question.
Well, first of all, I too would like to echo Jennifer's comments with regard to thank you for having me and representing CATO on the call. It may be important to viewers to know that apart from my chairing CATO, I do have a day job. I'm general manager for Colette, so I'm close to the industry. And I echo everything Jennifer said. And I'm speaking on behalf of CATO. I would tell you that Europe is hugely important to all CATO members, to varying degrees, but hugely important. And we are seeing strong demand, but the word that Jennifer used is fragile, and that is critical. We understand that, I mean, there's no one that doesn't understand that we're in a pandemic. And so we're not here to provide any solutions. That's not our role. We're here as members of associations and corporations themselves to ask for really two things. And I want to be clear, and Jennifer asked for these too, but I think we want to ask for two things. And we're not asking for any guarantees. We're not asking for any degrees of certainty. All right, so we understand a pandemic is forever changing. What we're asking for is some predictability so that we in turn can mitigate some of the uncertainty. And so what we need for Europe and quite frankly, governments around the world to provide us with data. What are those thresholds? Call them what you will, thresholds, milestones, markers, whatever they may be, that will allow us to define whether we are progressing or regressing and view the trends such as they are and allow business to, again, make decisions based on real data as to whether we will be running tours to Europe or anywhere, quite frankly. Without that, anyone who, I'm sure Jennifer would agree, hope is not a great strategy. We need some tools, and we're not asking for certainty or guarantees. We just need tools by which we can run our collective businesses. And I also want to echo, because I've been talking to CATO members daily. And, you know, we're right now, the sweet spot for whether we run tours for most companies is the drop dead date is about 90 days before a tour. So right now everyone is focused beyond mid-May, and it's a rolling 90 days. Some are sooner, some are later, but ultimately in another 30 days, we will be in mid-June. In 2 months, we will be halfway through July. And at that point, you have to question whether there will be a European season, a meaningful European season. So again, just to reiterate, I think what we really need, we're not asking for guarantees, we're not asking for certainty. What we're asking for is to provide some information, some data by which we can determine whether and how quickly borders will reopen. Big part of that in Europe is going to be ensuring that it is also consistent, right? So providing some predictability, also importantly, some consistency as to, you know, are we talking about different reopenings in different countries, wherever? So predictability and consistency, I think, is critical. Now I'll be quiet. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's you've both been very, very lucid and very clear. I sometimes wonder, just at the moment, and I'm just giving you the counter argument. I'm not disagreeing with you on any level, but you are still dealing with national governments you've not seen a regime change like you've seen in the United States. You're seeing the people who are being held responsible for the current situation still in charge of the situation, and they are deeply, deeply frightened as to what the electoral implications are of the crisis that they're handling. And people who are deeply frightened and deeply ignorant are not the best people to reason with. I am just putting a counter argument to you. I think there are some things that we can say beyond what you said, and I think you've put things very, very clearly. I think the first thing to stress, and stress it really clearly, is that Europe is perceived, particularly at times like this, as a unified destination. It's not seen as a whole series of individual countries that are reacting to it. It's still seen as Europe in market. And it's no good saying, oh, well, it's okay, we can start selling individual destination products. We can still sell Italy because people won't have, they'll have to go to Italy, but they won't have to worry about traveling from Italy into France or from Italy into Switzerland, or we can sell just French tours. It's not going to work. If Europe is still perceived as being shut, you won't be able to sell that product. I think the first thing to really ram hard, it's got to be a coordinated approach within Europe. Europe is seen as Europe in North America. I think the next thing to point out is that I think the point that you're making is so valid. You've got a 90-day window, and the 90-day window that you've got is, with respect, very much relevant for your sector of the market, which is a vital sector of the market from our point of view, which is the group sector of the market. If you look at something like the educational sector of the market, the student groups, these guys haven't got a 90-day window, they've got almost 12-month window. Next spring's, the spring 22 and summer 22 have to be sold in September 21. In order for it to be sold in September 21, the schools that take part have got to decide to do so sometime in the summer, early summer of this year. So if you want to see an educational movement in Europe from North America, we've got to get our decks fairly clear by the late spring, early summer. Otherwise, we're not going to see any educational groups in 22 either. And so the hangover of our inability to be clear when the recovery is going to take place is not going to last through 21. It will last through 22 unless we get ourselves focusing on what's necessary. We've got some questions here, guys. Very quickly, I've got, well, as ever with these questions, they ask pertinent questions which we've already answered. Someone here has asked, has there been any indication from the EU of when or if we may get intelligence on borders opening? At the moment, they're focused on being shut, but we have, with London as main transport point, it will also largely depend on what Britain is going to do. That's from someone in the Netherlands has asked that question. I'm just going, is it possible to get a steer on that, how that may differ in relation to the FIT market? So we've covered the educational market, we've covered the group market, folks. You both do FITs. Is the FIT market any different from your position?
I think, well, a couple things. You may see, as USTO as an industry association, certainly we have members who do FIT, and I think you will see some last-minute bookings because there is so much pent-up demand. But the significance of volume is obviously going to be dependent upon, again, the advance notice, because even if people want to go, you have to make sure you have airlift to actually get there. And again, the bulk of meaningful travel comes when tour operations begin. I was thinking about your comment, Tom, and I guess with all of these things, I think it's important to stress too, I do have a lot of sympathy for the difficult situation that many of these decision makers are in, right? Because you are dealing with this global crisis. But I guess what I look at both of you here and know that the work that you've done with Terry Dale at USTOA to develop tour care, to develop these industry standards around health and safety protocol, and in a lot of ways, traveling with a tour operator to group is probably one of the safest ways to go, because we have such rigid protocols in our own way of how we're bringing guests on board with testing requirements. We are already having guests that are calling us saying, "I've been vaccinated now. Where can I go?" And all of us are running programs and doing test runs to make sure that we're working with our supplier partners to have that compliance. And I know that many of our partners on this call today are nodding vigorously because their standards are even much higher than what we've asked for. And so I think that you will see some pickup in FIT, but I think honestly, the way that you're going to get the bulk of the volume, the bulk of that $9 billion that could be coming in from tour operations from the U.S. and do it in a responsible way is by working with operators to let the groups come.
I agree. I think it's a question we ought to be posing to the authorities almost is, what threat does a group of people who have been vaccinated and who have been tested, what threat do they pose? And everything poses a threat, but this poses such a small threat that it's got to be nugatory. I mean, it's not significant. And do you have anything to add to that, Brett?
Only I think that we certainly have at CATO, we have members, as Jennifer alluded to, with USDO who focus heavily on FIT. I think it really just comes down, it comes down to advance notice. People are looking forward to a vacation at some point, and hopefully in the mid to near future. And those decisions are going to be made fairly soon. I don't think if there's any uncertainty or any indecision, or if they can't go somewhere right now, they're going to begin to think about where they might be able to go. What's realistic, and that whether it's domestically within the U.S., domestically within Canada, those decisions are being curated right now. So this is a very difficult thing, and believe me, Jennifer and I are in jurisdictions which we have our own problems too, right? We have our own problems, so we're not pointing any fingers. Believe me, most of the work that ETOA and CATO are doing are dealing with our own governments, which are not always making the best decisions. So, but this is a reciprocal effort. We need to be working here in the US and in Canada. We need the European Union and others to better, as quickly as possible and as safely as possible, provide the information that will allow us to know, and our customers to know, and our members to know, are we going to be traveling and when? Big question.
That's a good question. I'm gonna just, do you plan, this is a straightforward question for you, do you plan to require vaccination proof for group travel participants?
We actually just had that conversation this morning. At the present, no. And I think as industry associations, we've said no, mainly because of the pace of the rollout for vaccinations obviously differs widely globally. And especially for the U.S. A family market, it would completely decimate that, because obviously that none of these tests have been done on children at this time. So what we are requiring is a COVID negative test prior to travel, there are that you're going to continue to see movement and change here, though. There's some operators that have come and said it's an either or. You can either show proof of vaccination or proof of antibody presence or COVID test. So I think this is going to be an evolving landscape, but at the present, we are not requiring a vaccination for travel. Although I can tell you that 90% of our guests have said that they would be happy to show proof of vaccination as condition to travel. So we know that our guests are getting it and they want to go.
Brett, what's your position at CATO?
There is no position at CATO. I would again echo what has been said. Obviously, every CATO member is going to be compliant with the local, whatever the local laws are. It's a difficult question for me, as I'm representing a number of different companies. I can tell you that that has not been discussed as anything that we'd be doing across the board at CATO.
Right. I'm just reading out my job's very easy. I'm just reading out the questions as they flow in. You got the tough one of answering them. I appreciate it. Will a two-way border opening be required between Europe and North America? I think it's almost, if people are going to start doing a quid pro quo here. People are going to start saying, right, we'll let you in if you let us in. Is that going to be happening, do you think? And if they are going to do that, are they going to do that on a European-wide basis? I think with Schengen they'll have to. Do you think that's going to happen? Is that going to happen in the United States, or?
I've always heard reciprocity as again, I'm not close to the discussions on a political level, but I have always heard that reciprocity would be a key condition for border opening. Clearly, 212F, which is the national act that clause that put the barriers up for European travel in the US by President Trump last March. We're all heavily lobbying for that to come down, and hopefully that would establish that reciprocity arrangement. I'm also hoping that the tests that have been done with Common Pass and some of the airlines might also offer some confidence about at least border openings within the UK and the US as a first step. So I can envision a situation where that's in fact the case, but someone's got to go first, you know, and we can't continue to play a game of chicken.
No, you're right. They've got to take a lead on this. Is that very much the position in Canada?
Well,
Brett?
we have a somewhat different political regime here that is actually putting up more barriers to travel than probably anywhere. And so to the extent that that lasts however long, the industry here is saying that, you know, this government wants to just get through our March break, which is, you know, late February, early March. And but we basically have a prohibition against travel here in Canada. But we also have a very, very, you know, we talk about reciprocity. Canada has a very, very short window in terms of its own travel season. You're really talking June, you know, June till about end of August or September. So there's inordinate pressure being brought to bear that if there's going to be a travel season in Canada, we probably need the information sooner than Europe. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but the same principles apply. Whether it's you're traveling from Europe or traveling from Canada, if there's any uncertainty about what's going to happen, it's only going to be to the detriment of the operators, the tour operators, customers, and there will be an attrition of people that will begin to look for where they can go with reasonable degree of certainty.
And what you've raised is a really interesting point, because one of the questions that, or one of the positions you keep hearing throughout Europe is, look, you guys won't be able to travel this summer, this season. You will be able to travel domestically. So our domestic industry is going to do really well on the back of this international catastrophe. Is that something that you hear? What's your reaction to that, Brett?
Well, that's the hope of most governments, right? But unfortunately, and I think this is, Jennifer is going to have a very different opinion of this. Canada is a very small market, number one, 30 some odd million people, a very short travel season, and quite frankly, being situated where we are in the Northern Hemisphere, the travel is generally north-south. People, you know, we have snowbirds, we have people that want to get away. There is a big Europe season, for sure, but Canadians are prone to leaving the country when they vacation and not traveling within. So it will be an entire shift if anyone. Jennifer and I were talking yesterday about the industries which are most at risk are industries like indigenous tourism, northern tourism. These industries which rely on Europe and the US will be decimated without either a reopening or government support. So I'm not optimistic that there's any way that the domestic market can fuel an industry which is really geared toward a European or international traveler.
Yeah, right. I mean, what's your position on this, Jennifer?
Yeah, I worry about complacency. I worry that it'll just be that we'll accept good enough. There's, you know, North America inbound into Europe is what, $70 billion, and you think that this is 1 in every 10 jobs across the world, and I think about all of our amazing partners that are small businesses, right? And they've relied on government support, and that support is going to at some point run out, right? And the domestic market alone, while it's certainly robust in Europe, is not going to be enough to carry longer term the survival of the industry that we all know and love in the way that we remembered it from 2019. We're not going to get there automatically in 2022, but we need to, again, responsibly open so that we can make sure that those jobs and that experience is happening for people, that they have the cash flow, that we can have a robust 2022 that we're all looking for.
You've almost summed it up too beautifully for me to cap it, but it's my responsibility to round this up very quickly. Just to point out that when people talk about domestic tourism compensating for inbound tourism, they hopelessly underestimate the hypothecated nature of demand. Inbound tourists do different things to domestic tourists, and when there is a high season for domestic tourism, invariably it's full. So all they're doing is piling more people into a high season for domestic demand. Okay, on that note, I just think we just need to reiterate the urgency of our plea. The volume of business that we're kissing goodbye to, and this is business on the books. It's not, you know, we've got it in hand, and we're throwing it away. And I think with that note, I just want to thank Brett so much, Brett Walker from the Canadian Association of Tour Operators, and Colette, and Jennifer from the United States Tour Operators Association, a bit, but also mainly from Tauck. Both of you, thank you so much for your input. The one last question we've got is, how are each country travel industry leaders getting together to approach their governments with a coordinated effort to plan an opening of borders, safety, protocols and consistent requirements? Thank you for that question. I will just leave it with what you said is, how are each country travel industry leaders getting together? How? I don't know, but we'll find out. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to hand you over to Aaron for the practical bits of this demonstration. Aaron, over to you.
Thanks both to Jennifer and Brett. I don't know if Tom was going to stay online. There's a few more questions on the panel that he may want to reply to directly on here. One that I did notice that's pretty relevant to this is how the future of tourism is going to look. So I really hope that lays the foundation to the North America marketplace, of which this will be the first edition for ETOA on the 4th of March. So as I said, we'll go through a few of the practical items. Many of you will be already signed up for that event. Others, I hope I can inspire you in the next 10 minutes or so that you'd like to sign up. I've put the registration link in the chat box there if you'd want to click on that and have a look. Just quickly, for those of you who are signed up, this is just a quick roundup of the format. There'll be 28 meetings, each with kind of 1-minute break throughout the day, some 5-minute breaks, and then a big break in the middle. We'll be running this event from 14:30 to 2100 CET. So when you receive, please make sure to localize those to your time zone where you are. You should have all received your invitation to submit your appointment preferences. Actually, if you just see in the handout section, you'll see a link there and there's a PDF to download. If you haven't already submitted your appointment preferences, please do so as soon as you can. You've got a week to go, so the system will shut on the 18th of February. If you already have done so, I'd recommend that at some point towards that date, you just go back and have a look, just in case there's any new operators that have been added in the meanwhile, or indeed suppliers, depending on which side you're joining from. And then on the 26th of February, you will receive your provisional appointments, which will allow you to start planning for the day. So I'll just very quickly demonstrate what you should be expecting. Just sharing my screen. There you go. So you'll receive your unique confirmation code. You need to log in to the system. I'm using one of my colleagues. So there's some detailed instructions here as to how to really use the filters that we have to break down the people that you'd like to see. On the left-hand side, you'll see all of your counterparts who are listed. So if you are a buyer, as I'm logged in now, you'll see all of the suppliers. You can click on them, see their company description and their link, and then if that's of interest to you, you add them onto the list on the right. And the most important thing is that you put them in order of preference. So you have 14 selections, whether you're a buyer or a supplier. They are taken in combination via our system Celestina, and your appointments are appointed accordingly. So it's really important that you put them in order of preference, and it's in your interest to put as many up to the limit of 14 as possible, and we'll seek to match as many as we can. So as I said, there'll be 28 meetings throughout the day, and you have 14 choices. Both sides are taken into account, whether you're a buyer or a supplier. Important thing to note as well, up to the deadline of the 18th of February, is the timing. If you know already that you won't be able to make the session, it's really helpful if we know that in advance. So please let us know if you need a blocking of time either at the beginning or towards the end of the session, or indeed over the midpoint break. It really helps us when we're doing the matching, so we don't have to unpick any meetings that we've already matched. So if you haven't already attended one of our events, I'm just going to play a very quick video to show you what to expect with our online event platform. We really strive to make it as simple and straightforward as possible. Therefore, once you've logged in, once you've received a login from the 2nd of March, you'll log in on the day of the event itself, and you'll be tuned in automatically to all of your assigned appointments. There's no toggling between platforms. Once you're in the browser, and we suggest that you use Google Chrome for this, you'll be tuned in automatically from one meeting to the next. I'm just going to play a very short video that will demonstrate that process.
Welcome to Celestina, the online workshop platform. This brief video will show you how the platform works so that you know what to expect when you join an online event. All delegates will be provided with a unique confirmation number. When joining the event, this can be used to access your appointments. Each event has its own homepage providing useful information and downloads. When the workshop is due to start, delegates will need to visit the agenda page. Organisers can broadcast a stream to all delegates in designated plenaries or when there are spaces in the agenda. On the left-hand side, each delegate will see their bespoke appointment list. Expanding these will show helpful information about the counterparts lined up for a meeting. Keep an eye on the clock and countdown. Delegates don't have to do anything, the appointments will tune in and connect automatically. When meetings are underway, there are various controls and functions. Make sure that you have the right camera and microphone selected. You can go to full screen or tiled mode when viewing your meetings. On the left-hand side, there's an option to share your screen or send a link via the meeting chat function. Keep an eye out for the countdown alerts. Again, you'll be tuned in automatically to your next meeting when the time comes. At all events, we provide live support, so please use this function if you have any questions.
So that's a brief introduction to the platform. In the meanwhile, as I said, it's very useful if all delegates can test their platform in advance of the event. So I'm just showing you a link that I would be very grateful if, following this webinar, that you would just log on to that. That's a kind of a mirror test. So it just tests your computer. What you should be seeing is yourself right back at you. And if that doesn't work, then just get in touch and we can advise on any tweaks to your setup that needs to take place. So I've just seen a few questions coming in. One is about whether you can have a colleague. We can have secondary delegates, but you need to let us know. Please contact whoever you've been liaising with, having booked into the event. We need to know in advance because they get a secondary login place. You can't just log in on the same confirmation code. That won't work. We need to be able to furnish your colleague with a secondary confirmation code. Another questions about new delegates, either on the supply side or the buyer side. New people are coming in all the time. So as I said, if you have already submitted your preferences, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for being so attentive and well on time. But I would suggest that at some point, either Wednesday or Thursday next week, you just log on to see if any new operators or suppliers have been added into the mix. So bear that in mind, that the list online and on your appointment preference list is not yet complete. We hope to be able to add some more people in there. In terms of screen sharing, as you'll have seen from the presentation, there is an option to share your screen via the platform. You can actually indeed test that on the video platform test as well. So if you want to run that through in advance, you can use that function too. We suggest you don't take the whole meetings. Remember, it's a relatively quick fire set of meetings. We try and make the countdown as obvious, but you will be abruptly cut off until your next meeting once the countdown kicks in. So bear in mind to keep an eye on the time. There's no way of delaying meetings as they run through. I don't see any other questions. If you have any more, please drop them in. I don't know, Tom, if you're still on the line, if you want to cover any more things that popped up in the previous session, just while anybody adds any extra information.
Whilst you're covering that, I think I'm just looking to see if there are any questions that I can answer that I haven't been covered in the presentation. I think the only one that we looked at, do we face any issues? I suppose what is the views on the general deterioration in the travelling public's financial situation? For what it's worth, at the moment in 2021, as both Jennifer and Brett were alluding to, most of the demand is coming from bookings that have already been made in 2020. So we have really a substantial quantity of business on the books from last year. Furthermore, the general perception is that the people who have suffered mostly from lockdown are ironically the people who work in our industry. They're not the people who are customers of our industry. The people who have survived lockdown reasonably well tend to be the professional classes and the retirees who make up the main sectors who represent the client base for European tourism. So you know, we're not worried immediately about the consequences of the financial situation on the client base. What the longer term consequences are, anybody can tell. I'm just trying to think, and the other question is, do we think there's going to be a long-term impact on the shape and nature of demand? It's customary at the moment for people to be thinking along those lines, and that that there is real scope for product and research that caters to people's shifting demand in the time of COVID. So people are saying that, you know, remote vacations are going to be coming into fashion. Small groups will be coming into fashion. Holidays that allow greater isolation will come into fashion. For what it's worth, and it's probably worth very little, my opinion is that these things may be relevant in 2021. I think when we hit a post-COVID world, that which is attractive or was attractive in the 2 centuries before 2019 will remain attractive thereafter. And people will still want to go to London, they will still want to go to Venice, they will still want to go to Paris, they will still want to go to Rome, they will still want to come to Europe. Aaron, I hope that answers some of the remaining questions that were lined up there.
Yeah, I've just had a few more other practical questions come in. There will be a delegate listing, not a full directory, but there will be contact details of everybody. If you obviously have a limited number of appointment opportunities, you'll be able to catch up with the others. Indeed, once the people you do match up with, you can actually use the appointment preference systems to complete your follow-up. If you return back into that platform after the event, there's a very convenient link to email each of the people you've met with. You can almost use that as a direct follow-up as you follow through your agenda. In regards to another question that I've had in about limiting the meetings, the Celestina algorithm or setup is based on the preferences submitted both by the suppliers and operators. So we always hope, even when it's not the most obvious connection, that it is based on the preferences submitted by one or other side. If you're really adamant that you don't want that meeting, just could you email support@celestina.org to make it very clear that you don't want any additional meetings added into that. Once the provisionals are provided, they're pretty much set. They're quite difficult to unpick, but as kind of just as a polite check-in, your meeting will connect if they're eventually in the final list, but you can also in advance send a note to the person. But we always urge people to turn up to the meeting, even if it's just for a few seconds, to make sure that the connection is made. You never know, in the future it might make more sense than at the moment. I'm sorry that you didn't understand what I was saying, Jennifer. I will catch up. I don't know what if there's a connection issue or I'm just speaking gibberish. But I think I've managed to cover all of the points that have come up. If not, as I said, support@celestina.org. Please get in touch. And the handout that I provided is your immediate to-do list for all of those who have signed up. If you haven't signed up yet, the link is also in the chat. Thank you very much. I think we're perfectly at 45 minutes now. We look forward to seeing you on the 4th of March.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.